Hello YouTube, my name is Nick, and today I have the new series to bring to you today, the highly anticipated, much hyped series that I've been talking about for a little while now. So I'm finally getting to it. I'm going to call this series probably Nick's Metal Picks. Creative, right? So what this series is going to entail is I'm just going to pick some albums that I really enjoy, that I've either had for a while or have come out and I haven't covered. And the only rules I'm going to have for this series is that it can't be something that I have already covered, either in small detail or ad nauseum. Could be new, could be old. I might show one CD, vinyl, cassette, might show 10, 20, whatever. But I'm going to kind of make this in a pseudo review format, I guess, but I'm going to try not to make it too breathy. I'm not going to ramble too much about it. But these videos are going to have some kind of, coherency. It's not just going to be like brutal death metal into black metal into prog stuff. I'll try to keep it a little more organized. So I'm going to start out with some heavy hitters today. I have two albums to show you, and these are two of the most important albums in my life. I have listened to each of these probably hundreds of times. Something that probably hasn't been covered by many, if any. That's probably going to be another rule of this. I'm not going to show like Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse, because, why am I going to bother making the video if everyone knows it anyway? Because the purpose of these are going to be me showing you stuff that you might not know before, that is super good, might be super old. So the first one I'm going to start out with, I spoiled in the last video. This is the one they were waiting for by Eliminator, slipcase cover. Again, 100 out of a 100. So, as I spoiled in the last video, this is my single favorite album of all time. This came out in 2010, I believe, along with a kind of a partner album, which I may cover eventually. Most people probably know Eliminator from their first album, Breaking the Wheel, which is a very expensive CD these days. It's kind of just like a new school kind of thrash metal, or as they like to call it, speed black metal. It fits because it's not entirely just thrash metal, especially the vocals. So most people know their thrash side. Almost no one that I know of know this side of Eliminator, which is essentially like the weirdest thing that you could possibly imagine, with it still being coherent and not just being weird for weird's sake. So I'm going to do my best to kind of explain this album because it's very, very difficult. So imagine kind of like blackened thrash metal mixed with some spoken word, mixed with some experimental songwriting, mixed with like 50s and 60s rock and roll blues. And it works a lot better than you might expect. Everyone I've ever showed this album to, it just blows their mind of how ridiculous it is. Not only is this album so creative, it's almost funny in a sense, almost on purpose. It feels kind of unprofessional at times on purpose. It all comes straight from the heart, and while it is a funny album, it has some dreadfully serious moments, especially with the lyrics and the songwriting and the instrumentation, which I will cover. So the vocals range from some high-pitched screams and like grunts and I guess a little bit of growling, with some actual spoken word. I think there are 3 songs on this album where it's literally just him reading poetry that he wrote. This is a two-man, by the way. You have Samus, who is also an Abigail Williams and is still in Decrepit Birth, And then you have Warchild. He's gone by many different pseudonyms, but I'm just going to keep it at Warchild. Um, Probably the most underappreciated guitar virtuoso of our generation. He's kind of fell off the face of the earth, so I don't really know what's going on, if he has any musical uh, I don't know, musical projects that he's working on right now, but Eliminator, for the most part, is defunct, I'm assuming. But you get some great vocals. The drums are amazing. If you've never listened to this, you probably have heard something by Samus and you didn't know it. But the true star of the whole project and of this album are the guitars. As I said, he probably is the greatest guitar virtuoso that I have ever heard, and I don't just mean like Yngwie style, like shred stuff. It's actual songwriting. It's the most soulful, ridiculously dexterous, and technically proficient guitar playing that you could possibly imagine. There are so many different generational guitar techniques on this album that it'll probably take you aback by how complex sometimes the guitars get. Um, sometimes you'll get some clean, like I said, 50s and 60s, like clean electric guitar, and sometimes you'll get some ridiculously fast picking, sweeping. Uh, Words don't even begin to describe how ridiculous the guitars get on this, and the tone is something to die for. It's incredibly easy for me to say that some of the moments on this album, the guitar tone is the most sensual, decadent, just heart-touching guitar tone that you could possibly imagine. Listen to the song "The Man in the Picture." If that song doesn't make you just want to like ball up and like rock yourself back and forth in a corner for a little while, then you're not like a real human being. It's important to mention as well that there are a ton of tonality changes with the songwriting as well as the instrumentation, because on that song, like the first 90% of it is just smooth, relaxing, dreamy, gorgeous, gorgeous guitar tones. And then the last second it hits a switch and punches you in the mouth and tells you to stop crying over yourself. And there's moments like that all over the album. There's moments where he's literally talking to himself. Like, there are multiple voices of him talking. Um, I could probably ramble about this album all day because I've listened to it so much and I've talked about it so much with other people that I could probably make an hour video just for this album. The first song on this, Atish, and the sixth song, Honey Sacrifice, are about 20 minutes long each, and they're probably two of the greatest songs ever written in metal history. Honey Sacrifice, the end of that song, that's a special moment to me in music history because I actually found this band very early on in my musical endeavors, and when I heard that, it's one of those things that sticks with you. It's like a moment that you always remember, and you can always come back to it to reminisce about certain memories, because I've been listening to this for years now, and whenever I listen to it, it reminds me of a bunch of other things. And if you have something like that in your life, then you're a lucky person. And another thing that makes this album special is that it is dreadfully serious, but at moments it's just hilarious. Like the second to last song, "Goodness Is Dead," "Enter the Black Hole Fucker." Maybe the most ridiculous song I've ever heard. Just, if you like extreme things that aren't just being stupid and they actually have some meaning to it, listen to this album. I mean it. I think that's where I'm going to stop there. I could probably go on for hours and hours about this album, I mean it. Um, just give it a try. I promise you will like something about it if you like metal in general, because I have yet to find someone who doesn't like it, and I have yet to find someone who already knew about it. So, check out The One They Are Waiting For by Eliminator. That's a kind of an easier album to get to, except that edition, because of course I got the last one. So, the second album I'm going to show actually came out this year, and I haven't covered it yet, I don't think. If I did, then oh well. Their first album is probably my favorite album to never get a physical pressing, and this is their second album. This is An Outsider by Rhine. I believe this is self-released. Um, I put these two together because ever since I found Eliminator and how strange they are, I've been looking for bands as weird and as genuine as them, and Rhine is the closest thing that I've found yet. And I wouldn't put them in the same category as in, musical genres or approach, but they have the same philosophy. They don't take themselves too seriously all the time, but when they do, it's really, really dark. It's really depressing. It's heartbreaking. The songwriting is just to die for. For the most part, I believe this is a one-man project by a man named Gabriel Tuchel. And this is another one of those where it's hard to put into a genre. It's kind of labeled as progressive death metal, but it's almost more appropriate just to put it under like progressive metal or like experimental or something. Their first album, just true art, and this album continues that. Everything is pretty much stepped up immensely with this. The production, the songwriting, just everything here is better than it already was, and it was already amazing to begin with. So it's kind of like, you have your death metal moments with the vocals and the instrumentation, I guess, but it doesn't stick to one genre very long or often. So you'll have some growls, you'll have some amazing clean singing. Some of my favorite clean singing in any genre, in any band, and he does pretty much all the work for this, and the lyricism is just... The lyrics on this are so dark and depressing sometimes, and they hit really close to home for me. I usually don't pay a ton attention to lyrics all the time, but this is something that is so incredibly dark and depressing in a genuine way. It's not like My Dying Bride or something, where you can tell it's genuine and he's making it to make it for himself, and it's not just being depressing to be depressing. Like the first song, Dreaming of Death, another one of my favorite songs ever. Really long songs, really varied songs. It doesn't meander, and it's worth mentioning that the instrumentation on this album isn't what makes it great. It's essentially carried by the songwriting and the vocals and the lyrics, because there's nothing entirely groundbreaking about the songwriting, or the instrumentation, excuse me, but it's well thought out, and it's performed adequately. It's not super fast, it's not super slow, but when you do get those instrumentation portions, especially on songs like Paralyzed and the title track and Outsider, it just adds so much atmosphere to it. There's a bunch of moments where the instrumentation kind of breaks, and there's some clean singing, and it's just like humongous sounding, and it's layered very proficiently, and it's very strange to try to describe this to someone, because there are moments on this that should not belong. Like, there's a random like polka breakdown in the middle of the song Pray, I think. And there's just a bunch of silly things along with the ultra serious, dark, depressing things. And it's stuff like that that makes me appreciate it more because, you almost feel like there's something wrong with them when they do something like that. So I'm going to try not to talk too much more about this album. It's something everyone should try because it's not hard to get into, and there's almost like sing-along moments that you could do, like especially with Dreaming of Death, The Spell of Dark Water, the title track, Paralyzed, just really catchy, almost hook-oriented like melodies, and I dare to call them choruses, but it's it's something else. Just trust me on this one. If you've ever watched my channel before, you know I won't steer you wrong unless you don't like Slam at all. So essentially, if I do a poor job of explaining this kind of thing, just take my word for it, please, because I wouldn't be making a video for it if I didn't absolutely love it. Which there are a lot of contenders right now, especially with like the new Vector, the new First Fragment, the new KFR, anything else that Maxim's gonna do the rest of the year. But this probably is my album of the year. This is probably my favorite album in several years. I've listened to this more than any other album that came out this year combined, probably, if that says anything. So if you like really, really weird stuff that isn't just weird for the sake of being weird, check out both those albums. Just trust me on this. So this is going to be a series that I do pretty often because I do have a ton of albums that I could show off that a lot of people might not know. So hopefully you get some enjoyment out of these. Hopefully they're not too boring or whatever. If you listen to these, leave some feedback, please. I'd love to know your opinions on them. So that's probably going to be the end of this video, and I'll see you next time, which will probably be a collection thing. So I got a billion things to show you. So see you next time.